But Brandon, we are going to move on now into the North Carolina Tar Heels. Only 2 teams left. And this one, we are going to get to the topic that everyone expects us to. I've mentioned it numerous times on this podcast of the Trubisky no longer being in North Carolina. But before we hit the record button, you said, you know what, Ricky, there's a position that I want to talk about that might be not a little bit more prevalent, but they lose 2 guys that had helped them last year. And that's a running back situation for North Carolina coming into this one. Losses both there and at quarterback for this offense.
Yeah, I mean, a huge loss at the running back position, which I think could even prove to be bigger than the passing game, and that's Elijah Hood and TJ Logan. Both of these guys, they combined to have 265 carries on the ground for over 1,400 yards, 18 combined touchdowns. These guys were a 1-2 punch, and they were dangerous. And Elijah Hood last year, that wasn't even his best season. He had over 1,400 yards, I believe it was. I don't know why I'm trying to guess. I can just look at it right here. He had over 1,400 yards in 2015 with 17 total touchdowns by himself. And I think that, the loss of both of these guys to the NFL is really going to hurt. And I think that that's what's going to impact them more than Mitch Trubisky. I truly do. And you look at one of the guys who could be in the mix for that running back spot, that's Jordan Brown. Last year he had 20 carries for 45 yards and 1 touchdown. That equates out to 2.9 yards a carry. Elijah Hood and TJ Logan combined for over 5. I think that Mitch Trubisky's spot is huge. The quarterback position is always big, but I think because you're kind of coming into a new season where you lose that star quarterback, you then look to lean on the running game. You can't do that here. And I think that's what's going to hurt North Carolina, even to the point, Ricky, where they may not be one of the top 3.
Well, and that's the thing for me. I kind of mentioned it. I want to say it was either in the Pitt or the Miami one. I think I was in the Pitt part of our preview. But if there was any team in this top 3 of the Coastal that I could see dropping down into 4 or below, it's the Tar Heels this year. And it's not just because of what they are losing at the running back spot, but it's also they lose Trubisky, they lose wide receivers. Like right now, the only wide receiver that looks to be their main starter is Austin Proehl, the son of Ricky Proehl, who is on that coaching staff. You may remember him from The Greatest Show on Turf with the St. Louis Rams back in the day with Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce. Guy knows a thing or two about catching the football and has a pretty good football son who's right now the number 1 wide receiver when you look at their depth chart. And the good thing for them coming in is they've got a guy in Brandon Harris who right now is the favorite to win that quarterback job, the graduate transfer from LSU. He's a guy that it's like, okay, I am solid with him being a starter. I'm not as questioning as like a true freshman coming in because I know it's more like I compare it to the Max Brown situation, but a little bit more confident in Brandon Harris than I am in Max Brown. I'm not saying Harris doesn't have to prove anything, Brandon. I'm just saying that the loss at quarterback the gap might not be as great as running back and wide receiver than quarterback.
Brandon Harris's best season came in 2015, where he had over 2,100 yards. This is just through the year, 13 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That was his best LSU year. In 2014, he had 1 game started, had 452 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. And then in 2016, 2 games, 2 started, 139 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks. Brandon Harris does not scream, ooh, yay, to me.
No, and this team, we talked about schedule in most of the previews when it comes to offense and defense. I'm going to say it right now, North Carolina starts 0-2 to start the season. They're 2 home games, but I don't think they win against Cal. Yes, I know Cal. We're going to get to them later in a Pac-12 preview. They don't have Davis Webb. However, I still don't feel confident in this North Carolina team beating them. And then September 9th, I'm going to say right now, North Carolina doesn't have a chance against Louisville. I don't care how many defensive guys that Louisville lost on the other side. They still have Lamar Action Jackson, and I don't think that week 2 of the season that this offense is going to have enough firepower to keep up with Louisville and Lamar Jackson. Now, the good thing is that's only one ACC loss. Another good thing is you don't have the Virginia Tech Miami Pitt games until October 21st to November 9th. Bam, 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 right in a row, away, home, away. However, this is a team that I look at those first 2 games, and with no running backs from last year, the receivers take a hit. Brandon Harris is now your starting quarterback because Mitch Trubisky's playing for the Chicago Bears. This is a team I look at that schedule and I go 0-2 to start. 0-2 to start the season.
I think that they're in for what's going to be, I think, an up and down season for them, and I think that it will be. It's almost one of those rebuilding years that you didn't want to have, and no one ever really wants to be in a rebuild, but it really hurts when you lose your star quarterback. And in the same year, you lose not only 1 star running back, but 2. And then in the same year, you lose your best wide receiver and 3 more. That doesn't do you a whole lot of good on the offensive side of the football. But I think for North Carolina, one thing that they really need to focus on, I think, is being able to establish a ground game, especially with Brandon Harris coming in at quarterback. That guy, what he can do is he can run the football around a little bit. So I think that him being able to work with that side of things is going to be important. For him to be able to do that effectively is going to be important because I'm not sold on how well of a passer he's going to be. I haven't been sold on how good of a passer he is.
Especially when Austin Proehl is right now the only main target that off-season wise we're looking like that's your main target.
Right now it's looking like it's only you and him as the only guys on offense. And then you return, I think, 3 starters on the offensive line. And you lose your center, you lose your tackle. I mean, The thing, though, with the offensive line I want to add is they do return some key guys. However, they add 2 grad transfers in Cam Dillard from Florida and Khalil Rogers from USC. So those guys could make – the offensive line could be the best unit on the offense, which is weird because most of the previews we've talked to up to this point has been like, well, that offensive line could be a little bit shaky this year. Might not be the case for the Tar Heels. I think that this is the team that we're looking at right now, Ricky, and I think we mentioned it too. Of all the teams that we will talk about in the upper echelon from last season, this team has the biggest hump to get over and could make the biggest step back out of any one of them.
This could be the year they got to lean a lot on their defense, and their defense even takes a big hit, as well as Gene Chizik, who was their defensive coordinator. He had to leave because of family reasons, so he resigned from that. They have a new coordinator coming in who's former linebacker coach for them. The scheme's going to stay the same, but still, I look at that and go, you're still losing your defensive coordinator, having a guy step up into a new role. And this defense, they've made improvements the last 2 seasons, but now because of the losses on offense, they may be asked to improve yet again and maybe even carry this team for the deficiencies that they have on offense.
Ricky, how many times, this is a quiz for you, how many times did North Carolina pick off a pass last year? How many times?
I'm going to go at 2.
Very close.
0?
1.
Oh, okay. That was my other guess was 0.
North Carolina's secondary picked off 1 pass all of last year against Citadel. But
no bueno.
They are having some guys come into place, and they've returned some guys from last year that I think they're going to have more than 1 interception. And you're right. Everything you just said, it's completely correct. They need to be able to be better. They have to be the ones that are going to help carry this team in a couple of their games this year. They're going to have to do it because we've looked at the offense. It's not there to be able to keep up in a game where there's a shootout. So they're going to have to hold teams down so there's not one.
There's 3 questions here that I'm looking at for the Athlon Sports preview for the Tar Heels, and they hit the nail right on the head. The first one is, can there be enough playmakers on offense? Number 2, can the graduate transfers provide a big lift immediately? And number 3, can the defense become an asset instead of a liability? My answer to those, no, I don't think there's going to be enough playmakers this season. I'm going to say right now, maybe. The transfers, like Brandon Harris is a big one to me. Brandon Harris and the 2 on the offensive line coming in. And then my one for the defense, they're going to have to be, because if the defense becomes a liability and can't turn the ball over and get opportunities back to the offense, this Tar Heel team might be looking at, and I'll eyeball their schedule, 5-6 losses this year. Imagine that. If they went from a team that was 8-5, 5-3 in the conference, 1 game away from going to the ACC championship game, all the way to a team that does 7-6 now, 7-6, 8, staying 8-5, but an 8-5 where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5, all of your losses coming within the conference. And just having, if we look on last year's standings, yeah, you're looking and going, 5-3 in the conference, they were second. But if they get 5, that means they would drop to the bottom 3 teams in the Coastal. That's what 2 games could make in this division. Could be the difference between second in the conference and bottom 3 in the Coastal side of the ACC.
I'll be honest with you. I don't think it has anything to do with the games. It has the players playing in them. It has to do with the players playing in those games, because those players are not going to be named Mitch Trubisky. It's not going to be Hood. It's not going to be any of those guys. And that's the biggest thing. I don't care if you go out there and play against, Clemson every day. If you don't have the guys to be able to win, you ain't going to win. I mean, it's simple as that. I know I basically should have just called myself Charles Barkley on that one. Because if you don't win, you don't win. That's kind of how it sounds. But
you got to score points to win the game. Boom!
I think that at the end of the day, though, that's the biggest thing. Is that North Carolina just needs to go out into every single one of these games and just try and be competitive. And now maybe they've got some guys waiting in the wings in the receiver position that, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, it's going to be, oh wow, where'd they come from? They're really good. And maybe some of the guys that we saw there last year, like a Jordan Brown, who only had 20 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown on the season, maybe he comes out in a bigger workload. He's going to be able to do well. He's going to be able to shine and perform. Maybe the freshman they've got coming in is going to be able to make an impact right away. There's a lot of questions, and that's why I think this North Carolina team is one of those teams where you look at them and you go, I'm really not sure. That's when a guy like you, who does a show like this, can go down and go, could be a loss, could be a loss, could be a loss. I see 5 losses. That's just what we do. But this right now for North Carolina, I don't think is a spot they necessarily want to be in. But this is a spot where they look at what they've got, they see how they need to build it, and next year they're set. They know what they need to go get in a recruiting class. They know what they need. Well, that's what this year's going to help them do. And maybe, you know what? If it's not Brandon Harris, he's going to be the key player. He's going to be the key player for this team, because how is he going to be able to do?
Because coming from a big program,
coming from an LSU team in the SEC over to a ACC team in North Carolina, a team that was on the rise. Mitch Trubisky, if he would have just stayed another year, I think he prematurely came out, but that's up to him. Totally get it. But I think that Brandon Harris, however, if he does not get it done, there are guys behind him who I don't think Larry Fedora would hesitate to go to them and give them the job, because at the same time, I think he'd like to be able to win some games and not lose them all.
Here's a question I've got. If they do poor this season, let's say 6-7 or below poor, do we start calling for, or do Tar Heel fans begin the light chatter of calling for Fedora's head?
Tar Heel fans will, of
Meaning
course.
let's get him out of town. Because I look at this team since he took over. 2012, I'm going to say, is a throwaway season, only because they were not eligible for the ACC title game that year. So, yes, it was a good season wins and loss-wise, but you couldn't play in the ACC title game, so we can't really go off of postseason-wise for you. But this is a team in the last 4 seasons, 1-3 in their bowl games. They've been to the ACC title game only once. Would have been twice if they were eligible in 2012. They lost that game to Clemson. Yeah, really exciting game, but they still lost that game to Clemson. That was their 11-3, their only season where they had more than 8 wins in a year. And I kind of wonder, I can't remember which team we had this question for in this conference. I think it was someone in the Atlantic, but even if they go 6-7, 7-6, do Tar Heel fans look and go, we've reached our cap with Fedora? We need to get that guy who's going to get us over the hump, especially if the recruiting class for next year is not solid, is not one that makes Tar Heel fans go, yes, we can build off of that class.
I think that's the biggest thing, is we know how this year's going to go, not how they want it to. At least I'm pretty convinced of that with seeing what we've got to work with, what they've got to work with. I think that you're right. You hit the nail on the head again with the fact that you've got to look and see what the recruits are going to look like coming in for next year. Now, if they look really good, you've got some promising guys, I'd say, hey, you know what? We got to give them a chance. We got to see this through. But if it goes through and, you got some guys not really making that big of an impact for you, doesn't really look like it's moving along like they'd like it to out on the field. Every year there seems to be some pretty good head coaches that come available. You may want to go after one of them. And
there is one big name I'll throw out there right now who you can always pull around for enough money. Les Miles is out there. You can go give him a big contract. See if he just throw the line out there. See if the fish will come on and take a little nibble so that you can pull it and reel it in. But like you said, there are coaches. Brian Kelly might be available after this season. Who knows?
Les Miles right now, Ricky, this is an interesting question. I want to talk about this for just a second. I'm going to just ask you this question.
For a hot second?
Doesn't have to do with North Carolina. And it's Les Miles. He's been out of head coaching with football for just a little bit now. And I'm surprised that no one has picked him up yet. Is he like the Bill Cowher, where Bill Cowher, he left, and then he was rumored to some jobs, didn't take any, and joined a nice, on-air spot with NFL Today in the morning, and he is not taking anything. He's done in coaching. Do you think that's what happens to Les Miles, or do you think he gets another job?
I think he'll get another job. I think Les Miles right now he has built up enough of a living, and now he can use his kind of where he's at to do the analyst gig, kind of like Chip Kelly, waiting for that perfect job, waiting for it. I'm going to get the analyst gig. I'm going to do that, make some money, but then I'm going to go ahead and wait for it. And the one that I think is pie in the sky perfect for him during his playing career, played at Michigan in the 70s. Let's be honest. Harbaugh's not going to be there forever. An NFL job is going to start chirping sooner or later that they want Harbaugh, and Harbaugh will be back in the NFL before we know it. When that Michigan job opens, Les Miles is the first one they call, or Les Miles calls them, one of the two. That'd be the perfect one, bringing a Michigan guy who's won in the SEC, because, you look at what Ohio State did, bring in an SEC coach, they become successful because that kind of football, that mentality does well no matter what conference you're into. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. That might be you might look at it and go, Ricky's trying to be the smartest guy in the room here, but that's what I look at. He's a guy that doesn't have to take the next available job. he can sit there and let the right job come to him. That's where he is in his kind of situation. But this is where we're going to turn it on to you guys for the Tar Heel part of the conversation. Let us know what you guys think about the Tar Heels entering this season. How's the offense going to be? Can the defense hold form while the offense figures things out? Let us know down below in the comment section.